I'd love to just start with like, what's your first memory of Spy Kids? Like you were approached, you auditioned. Tell me sort of how you came into that world.
I auditioned. It went amazingly well. But then I had to audition like 7 more times because at the time, he who shall not be named, but really it's, Weinstein Brothers, they ran Dimension. Basically, they were like, she's way too old for this. If we decide to do more and this works, we need her to be able to age with the project and still be a kid and not be a teenager. And basically, like, they didn't want me, but Robert fought for me.
Welcome to More Than a Movie, a podcast that gives you a behind-the-scenes look at your favorite movies. I'm your host, Alex Fumero. Last season, we did a deep dive on American Me. This season, I'll focus on a different movie each episode, feature interviews with the biggest actors, directors, writers, and producers behind them, and tap into the history of Latinos in film. This episode is all about Spy Kids, the 2001 action-adventure superhero movie, directed by Robert Rodriguez and starring Antonio Banderas, Alan Cumming, and Alexa Pena-Vega. Despite a relatively modest budget of $35 million, the movie was a massive hit at the box office, bringing in $148 million worldwide, and proving that a Latino family in an original idea not based on any comic book could be a blockbuster success. In this episode, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to speak to 2 different people to get 2 different perspectives on why Spy Kids was such a big hit and what we can learn from it today. Star of the movie, Alexa Pena-Vega, and the woman behind the camera making it all possible, producer Elizabeth Avian. Alexa Elise Pena-Vega, who has a really long full name like any good Latin person, got her big break playing the lead role in Spy Kids, Carmen Cortez, who also has a really long full name, as you'll hear in this clip from the film.
That's a safe house? Looks more like an outhouse.
Your name?
Carmen Cortez?
Your full name, please.
I don't use my full name, it's too long.
Your full name, please.
Carmen Elizabeth Juanita Ecosca Brava Cortez. My name's a passcode?
So, Alexa Pena-Vega, thank you for being here on More Than a Movie. We're going to talk about a few different things, Spy Kids among them. But first, I just wanted to ask, where are you from?
That's kind of a long answer. So I was born in Miami, Florida. I lived in Miami and Ocala, and we kind of lived all over. But I started acting when I was really young, when I was 4 years old. So we kind of traveled all over the world for work. But home base then became Los Angeles. But I booked a television series at 4 years old. And that's kind of what jump-started all of it. But again, we moved around a lot. I mean, if you think about it, very rarely do films actually shoot in California. So our family just kind of uprooted a lot. But that's all I've ever known.
What was that experience like for you being so young on sets? And yeah, let's start there. What was that like?
Well, for me, I honestly don't know any other life. This is what I grew up doing and I love it. I was never forced into it. I was never pushed into it. Actually, I loved it so much that there was a time, I think I was like 9 or 10, I was kind of being a turd. That's the best way to put it. I was being like kind of a brat. And my mom pulled me out of the industry. And she's like, you're going to regular school. You're not doing this anymore because I don't like your attitude. And that was my punishment. Whereas most parents would be like, find a different punishment. We can't kill her career. Like most industry parents really put the career first. And I had to give my mom a lot of credit because the industry never came first. Family was always first.
Yeah.
But for me, I grew up, and I would say the same thing with my little brother and Spy Kids, Daryl. We reminisce about this a lot because it's not the case anymore. We had a fantastic experience being child actors. We really, really did. Like we just thrived. What makes me sad for kids today is we didn't have social media back then. All these kids have social media. So when we got a movie, we weren't looking at it like, we're going to be stars. We just thought it was awesome. We loved what we did. And the fact that like we got to be Spy Kids, we were playing with gadgets all the time. These sets were actually built. These aren't just like green screens. They built that safe house. They built Floop's castle. I mean, it was extraordinary, absolutely incredible. So as a kid, you're just thinking this is the coolest thing ever.
That's a good segue into Spy Kids. I'd love to just start with like, what's your first memory of Spy Kids? Like you were approached, you auditioned. Tell me sort of how you came into that world.
I remember heading into, so Mary Vernew is the casting director for this movie, and she does all of Robert's films. And I've known Mary since I was a kid, like a little kid, because I would audition for her all the time. And she has this casting office in Venice, or at least back then she did. And I remember walking back to that area. I remember what I was wearing. Like I had my hair in pigtails, I had a tie-dye shirt, and I was really excited about this movie. And not because no one knew what it was going to be. Nobody knew it was going to be what it was. But I loved it because these kids are literally spies. They are so cool. Their parents are these cool spies, and now they have to jump in and save the world and save their parents. And there's bad guys. It just sounded really, really fun. And I walk into the audition, and at the time I'd already been working a lot. So I was blessed with the opportunity to just go right into a director meeting. But I'm like 9, so I don't know anything about this, right?
So Robert Rodriguez is in the room, but you're like, you're sort of like, this is normal.
There. Well, I'm like, you're the director? And he's like, yeah, I'm the director. I'm like, but you're so cool. How are you the director? And he starts laughing. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're in a bandana. And I remember he had like this cool green bandana on. And he was like in like his ripped jeans. And he was cool and young. He looked like a rock star. And he had his guitar with him. So as like a little kid, I'm thinking, I want to work with this guy. I'm so used to working with these like old stuffy directors. This guy seems like a lot of fun. And he was so just warm and didn't treat me like a child. He just interacted back and forth so well. And I always carried myself pretty well regardless. Like I never had an issue talking with anybody or, going into auditions, but being able to have that back and forth where we just had fun in there and it was a little less business. That was the coolest thing ever. And then I auditioned. It went amazingly well. But then I had to audition like 7 more times because at the time, he who shall not be named, but really it's, Weinstein Brothers, they ran Dimension. What was it? Was it Dimension?
Yeah, Dimension
and what
Films.
Else?
Yeah.
Miramax.
Yeah.
Miramax. So basically they were like, she's way too old for this. If we decide to do more and this works, we need her to be able to age with the project and still be a kid and not be a teenager. And basically like they didn't want me, but Robert fought for me. So I auditioned again and again and again until I finally screen tested for the movie and then I booked it. But I'm talking like the length of time that it took to get through that. It wasn't overnight. Like this was months.
Wow. And so did you know about the types of movies that Robert Rodriguez directed at the time?
Not at all. No, not at all.
I imagine your parents were not allowing you to do research before going in, watching his previous films.
You know what? I think for us, again, I was a kid playing dress up.
Yeah.
Like I never considered what I did work. Even though I took it seriously, it wasn't like I'm going to my job today. I was just a little kid who loved like playing different roles and putting on wardrobe and becoming a whole different person. That was exciting to me. And that's what kids do naturally anyway. And that's essentially what I got to do for a living, even though I didn't consider it a job. It was just fun.
And so what Spy Kids is touted, and one of the reasons we're doing it, this season of More Than a Movie is all about kind of movies in my lifetime that shaped the way people sort of saw Latinos or moments that were pivotal kind of for Latinos in Hollywood. And I would argue Spy Kids is certainly from a box office perspective, like the most important, which people I think sleep on a little bit. From that perspective, was it presented to you as like, this is a Latino family, this is a big deal? Or what was Robert's kind of approach to talking about the culture of the Cortez family?
Honestly, it was just normal. I mean, we never put emphasis on it back in the day. And I think I come from a mixed family. Like if you put me and my sister side by side, I mean, I'm one of 7, but my sister right underneath me, the closest to me, she has gorgeous cocoa bean skin and looks incredibly Colombian. I, on the other hand, I'm like tan, but I look like a white girl. My hair's blonde. She has just cocoa bean skin, dark hair. And yet we are from the same family. We grew up the exact same way. So I think for us, it was just such a normal thing. We never put an emphasis on, we're Hispanic, you're not Hispanic, we're going to make Hispanic movies. Like there was never that. And I think from a kid point of view, you don't really view the world that way. I think as you get older and you get to see the things that happen, you know, you do see like a lot of division, especially nowadays. But as a kid, it's all very innocent. You're like, this is just what people look like. And I grew up blessed with so many different cultures around me. It wasn't like we were like the only Hispanic family in the neighborhood and we're around white people, or we're only in a Hispanic neighborhood. I mean, Miami is loaded with Hispanic people, but my parents' friend group were incredibly diverse. So we always grew up very, very cultured. So then you bring us to Spy Kids. Robert runs the set the same way. Like he's very cultured with his projects. He does love where he comes from. And I think he pays homage to his culture with every movie that he makes, with every project that he's a part of. And I think it ultimately comes back to that Hispanic family feeling. Like Hispanic families are tight knit. They grow everywhere together. They work together. They eat together. Like it's like this beautiful community that is just so loving and amazing. And I think that's also why so many people kind of flocked to Spy Kids. It felt very warm and welcoming. I always feel like Hispanic homes are so warm and welcoming. And that's literally what Robert did on screen. He's like, I want to invite people in, but I don't want it to feel like I'm trying to teach people a lesson of what diversity looks like. He's like, I'm just going to give them a glimpse of what a beautiful mixed family looks like. And that was the Cortez family. You had Carla Gugino, who's drop dead gorgeous and like the coolest mom ever. You had Antonio, who's like handsome, amazing, charismatic. And then the byproduct of those two people are Carmen and Junie. And they all felt attainable as a kid. I felt like a lot of other kids felt like this could be me. It doesn't feel far-fetched. It doesn't feel like this is only meant for Hispanic families or this is only meant for the white kids. Like this is meant for everybody, because at any moment I could find out that my parents are spies. What would I do? How would I react? Would I be ready? I can't tell you how many kids came up to me after that movie. Like, how do I become a spy?
Well, yeah. And that's what I think is so interesting. I mean, even in the family, right? In the sequel, Ricardo Montalban comes on to be the grandfather, right? And then you have Danny Trejo is supposed to be the uncle, right? And so, and Antonio Banderas is from Spain. You know, he's a Spaniard. And so it does seem like Robert was trying to create a vibe, you know, a sort of whatever you want to call a Hispanic, Latino kind of vibe in this family without ever really getting super specific about where these folks were from.
Where they're from. Yeah.
The importance was on the scale of the movie, the idea that like these were kids who were going to get to play spies.
Right. And I think because he focused on that, it was just so organic in the way that he introduced culture into the movie. I think the second you start focusing on culture and trying to like show people culture, they feel it and they feel preached to. And that's really annoying. Latin families don't need to go out and be like, we're a Latino family. It's like, no, they just live it. Like walk into the house. There's no secret that it's a Hispanic household. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like he did such a good job of just being so genuine and just sharing a story where it happened to be a Hispanic family.
And you're portraying them as superheroes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like for kids, that had to feel so empowering. You know, we didn't really have projects like this at the time. And if there were other projects, they definitely were not Hispanic families. So it was really cool to have created a space for kids and Latinos in the industry, because it opened up a world to allow the industry to know you can make successful films with children and you can make successful films within like a multicultural family. And it's not frowned upon. It's actually rejoiced and like people love it.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And what I loved about it was he didn't focus on that. He was able to embrace and celebrate culture, but focus on storytelling. And when you focus on storytelling, it allows an audience to come in and genuinely fall into this world and be curious about it and explore it and want to be a part of it. And that's what I love about Robert's films.
Well, and also people don't really understand I mean, look, Spy Kids, the first one was relatively cheap as far as big superhero movies go, right? $35 million.
Yeah.
But in order to get a movie
he gave money back.
He gave money back.
So the movie did so well that Weinstein's were like, we're going to give you more money for the second one. He's like, I need less money for the second one. I'm going to make it for even less money. And I'm like, how does he do it? But he does it. And he's great at it.
What do you think Spy Kids' success as a movie can teach us about, how we should continue to approach representation today? Right? Like, why has it taken so long for there to be another Latino superhero movie?
It's crazy to me because the formula worked so well. But I think because Robert really works from his experience and his own family life at home and wanted to just tell a story of these two young kids. His focus first was like two young kid superhero kind of. He's like, I want to make kids think that they can be anything, because they can be anything. So we focused on a good story first. And then in that, he just implemented what he grew up with, the only thing that he knew, and that was a Hispanic family. So that's what he poured into the screen. And I think if you're a filmmaker and you're listening and you come from like a really awesome cultured background, put that in your project. Don't be afraid of it. Don't steer away from it. Embrace it. And I think for Robert, it worked for him because he really embraced his culture, and it shows in the projects that he makes.
I hope by now you've really embraced your culture, and also that there are multiple ad breaks in every episode of this show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to More Than a Movie and my interview with Spy Kids producer Elizabeth Avian. Avian is a Venezuelan-born Texan who immigrated to the U.S. as a kid, studied film and architecture at Rice University, and somehow ended up helping to run the University of Texas at Austin, where one day her boss, the provost of the university, introduced her to their new file clerk, this brash freshman filmmaker kid named Robert Rodriguez. He had done 20 short films, but was not a student in the film school. Elizabeth, already producing before she was even aware of it, helped him apply and get into the film school and to raise money for his first couple of films, Bedhead and El Mariachi, the latter of which would launch both their careers. But like a good producer, Elizabeth keeps a much lower profile than the actors or the director, even though so many aspects of the film, from financing to distribution, fall under her purview. So with Spy Kids, a movie that was very much her baby, I was excited to get the opportunity to put the spotlight on her this time. You've built a lot of careers. You start from a place of talent when you're looking for your actors. I'm curious if you can tell us about how you found your young female lead for the original Spy Kids, Alexa Penavega.
She's so beautiful. Both her and Daryl Sabara are part of our lives so deeply. I mean, they're like our children. I mean, truly. And now I feel like I have grandkids now that they both have children and are beautifully married to wonderful people. But I'll tell you, Alexa was already a working actress when we found her. She had been in Mississippi Burning. She also, a very funny, beautiful story about her spirit, because she has such a beautiful spirit. There was a TV show called Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds, and he was producing it and everything. You know, he created it. Alexa played his daughter in this thing. And when he interviewed her for the casting, she sat there all of, I think, 6 years old when she was auditioning. And he goes, so what do you think about the role? You know, he was just kind of making chit chat with her, right? And she goes, well, when I get the offer or when I get the show, when, not if, when, I plan on doing this. I mean, it floored him to the point that when she's the one. I mean, like when she's like, when?
Yeah.
Like, who is this person, right? And this little Latina girl from nowhere, from Florida, you know, really, you know, already was getting.
I'm from Florida, and I can tell you it's definitely nowhere.
You know, I mean, because they didn't live like in Miami, but she was already auditioning somewhere up there.
Yeah, it's like
middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere.
And she just had a presence about her, you know, and that's the thing. I have to say that Robert has this amazing ability to find that in those kids. because it's not just that one, but Shark Boy Lava Girl, just over and over. Even when you see the movie When We Can Be Heroes, I mean, that's 12 kids you had to gather, and it's still so fun, and it has that spirit of fun. And, I'm like, I love watching them. They're all now older, and she just had this presence and this strength from within. The same thing with little Daryl. I mean, those kids worked 56 days in Spy Kids. I think we had a 58-day shoot, and they worked 56 of those 58 days, knowing their lines, coming prepared, just incredibly self-possessed. And I'll tell you, Spy Kids 2, Alexa was only 11 or 12. And she goes, Miss Elizabeth, she says to me in her little voice, Miss Elizabeth, why do they always keep rushing me? I mean, this is the presence of mind of this little girl. Whenever I go to the bathroom, they're like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I can't even go to the bathroom, take a break, hurry up, hurry up. In movies, everything's hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And I said to her, well, honey, every minute in a movie costs money. And she said to me, how much? And I said, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. And I went back to my office and I started quantifying what a minute on Spy Kids was costing. And I rounded it up a little bit, like, it was like 180 something a minute. And I rounded it, like $200.
Wow.
And I said, look, it's $200 a minute. And I said, those nice little jeans you like to buy for yourself? Because at that age, she was already like entering teenagerhood and she was liking the nicer things. And I said, those little jeans, it's like flushing one down the toilet every minute. I said, and she goes, okay. She's pro, man. She's a pro. But the fact that she had the wherewithal to ask how much, I love it, But she wanted to know as a professional, what is it that we're talking about? And moments like that, I think those two kids really were so incredibly hardworking and giving and souls that just rare, So
at the time, how does the idea for Spy Kids come to be, and what kind of pushback do you guys initially get on the idea of building this around like a kind of mixed or Hispanic family?
Well, the blessing that came from Robert Newman, having been trained at Miramax, is that he gave us two pieces of advice with El Mariachi. One, sell it to Columbia Pictures and get a first picture deal because they can produce your next movie. Okay?
Smart.
Because Miramax, even though they're offering you more money, they are not producers. They're not a studio. At that moment, they were not a studio.
Mm.
But we had the ability to access those guys. And then Quentin comes out, with Pulp Fiction, which was produced. That's kind of where it all started, with Miramax to produce films. So they become a studio. Okay. So that advice connected us immediately to the Miramax family because Newman had come from there,
Yeah.
And I say all that because Desperado was so cool. And then we did 4 Rooms, which ended up being for Miramax. They bought it. And then we did Dusk Till Dawn, again, Miramax.
Yeah.
But it was for the genre, which was Bob Weinstein's Dimension. So we end up in that world where the relationships began to be built in a very good way, for all of us. It's much easier for me as a producer to call Bob directly and get the answers versus at a studio where I have to go through layers. So Robert had been doing 4 Rooms. And when he was sitting there filming 4 Rooms, Antonio is there with his debonair tuxedo and the mom is all dressed up because it's supposed to be December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And these 2 little kids. And Robert is sitting there and he's watching this and he goes, oh, that's such a cool shot. He goes, who are these people? In his mind, who are these people? What do they do? And these kids, how are they so smart? And how can they, as he had written this thing, it was like, who are they? And the idea of Spy Kids just like, boom, hit him.
Let's listen to a bit of the trailer.
No one would ever guess that Mom and Dad are the world's top secret agents.
Your parents are international spies, but something's gone wrong.
Now, the only 2 people who can save them are their kids. Never send a grown-up to do a kid's job. Spy Kids. Real spies.
This is 1994. End of 1994. And he thought, oh crap, say nothing to anyone. say nothing to anyone, don't even mention the name. This is telling himself all of this because I got to make that movie. And if anybody knows the title, it'll be done, you know? So he was smart enough at that point. So, calladito te ves más bonito. So the seed was there.
What I see, you know, talking to Andy or even Natalie Morales, who's very young, or Luis Valdez, who's a legend, right? There's this idea that collaborating across cultures is how we get the best work done. And that actually we make the greatest leaps in terms of representation by doing that. And it seems like you guys were on that tip from the very beginning. Even the casting of the Spy Kids family, you know, Antonio is Hispanic, but not Latino, if we're being very technical,
Is
right?
exactly correct.
Alexa, who we interviewed, is Latina, you know, of Colombian descent.
Mm-hmm.
But the family, I don't think that the intention was to portray
It's somewhere
right,
in South
as
America.
Latino. It's like
somewhere
right.
in South America. Yeah, exactly. That was the mindset. This movie happened somewhere in South America.
Somewhere in South America. Okay.
But by the way, then you have Cheech, then you have Danny Trejo, then, you know,
100%.
literally start adding. By the way, what I always said is like, look, it's iced tea. We just put passion fruit in it.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
You know, to me, Spy Kids, it needed to be like iced tea. Americans could consume it, but then go, oh, wow, what is that? You know? Oh,
I love that.
you know? And I think that's what we have excelled at. It's literally putting our flavoring into the cast and the crew, by the way, because I'm a believer in crew too, you know, being part and promoting people and be able to get them in. So, yeah, but that's been my description, even to Robert then. It's like we made, you know, passion with flavor in.
Yeah, with passion fruit in there.
So, you know, it's been palatable and they've consumed it, you know, Americans and all people all over the world, because it is something recognizable.
Oh, yeah. And that movie made I think 5x its budget or something crazy.
Actually, I think the second Spy Kids made more money than the first because it was not owned property. By the way, in the aftermarket, it's made just as much or more, probably, you know, all of them. And they continue to, you know.
Right. I mean, you're making a new one now.
I'll tell you a crazy story. So we just did Spy Kids Armageddon. Okay? Now a kid.
Right. Who you worked on that with your son, correct?
Yeah, exactly. We worked on it, you know,
Incredible.
with Robert, and I worked on it. Racer co-produced it. I mean, the whole thing. So I give him full props. But I'm a part of that, which is awesome. I was there every day to also do what I do great, which is making sure our crew and teaching our children how to behave as a team member in that crew, you know, as people that you get to know everyone. You truly go out of your way to work in anything that you need to do in a movie. But this is how it came about. Again, why? Because, the scenario, were you old enough when you saw Spy Kids? How old?
I'm 40.
Or were you a cool guy in your 20s? Were you a cool guy in your 20s?
I was already, but you know, I was in college, but I was watching it from the lens of someone who wanted to make movies, right? And who had never really seen that kind of a family on screen. So even though, I mean, look, some of the jokes are for kids, you know?
Lin-Manuel Miranda saw it in the same reason. He was a teacher. And by the way, he himself with tears in his eyes, literally, because I went to see In the Heights.
To be fair, Lin has tears in his eyes all the time.
But he literally said to me, he said, you need to know that when I saw that this movie had come out, I paid out of my own pocket to take my kids from my class. And this movie made me bust out this script of In the Heights that I had been working on since college and made me want to bring it to life. So Spy Kids did that for him as a teacher, you know, as a Latino, you know, who was already at that age. So a lot of people didn't see Spy Kids in your 20s. But now, pandemic comes. These people who were in their 20s, they were cool and whatever, they were in LA trying to make film, blah, blah, blah. Now they're in their...
They have kids now.
You know, late 30s, early 40s, right? And now they're stuck at home with their little kids that they now have had. And their little kids begin to watch because We Can Be Heroes came out. Okay? That movie that Robert made for Netflix.
Yeah.
And as a result, smartly, they also had the Spy Kids movies. So they began to watch obsessively the Spy Kids movies nonstop. And these parents that didn't see them or saw them but couldn't remember or whatever are asking, who has the rights to this? They need to make more of these, right? Because my kids are watching movies from 20 years ago and they're obsessed with them, right?
Yeah.
So that's how that one comes about, which was very amazing for us to say, okay, we can sign up for this mission as a family. And it is kind of like the last line in the first Spy Kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where, family is something that is worth, and we will do it as a family. So that's what happened.
Yeah. I mean, that franchise was seminal in so many ways. And you and Robert have just been involved time and time again in making movies that have inspired other filmmakers to keep making movies, which makes sense given your trajectory. I wonder, how are you feeling about the fact that 22 years later, I think if my math is right, we have yet to see another Latino superhero movie? So what do you attribute that to as someone who's lived and breathed this industry for this long and who has been outside of Hollywood sort of purposefully, like attuned to it, but has an outside perspective?
I think Robert is a filmmaker that comes from a big family, and being a Mexican American is a different experience. Also, growing up in San Antonio, not coming from this business, just a different experience that to me has to do with coming from within, but also growing up with movies where you maybe had one actress, any one of those actors. Evita Moreno, growing up and his parents being such proud Latinos, Mexican Americans, very involved in politics. And also supporting those kind of films, this is like Raquel Welch, anybody, little tiny, sprig that came through. So our people wanted to see that. They wanted to, but they weren't in the power to do it. I believe that when you get in there, again, you have to make something that makes money. I'll tell you, I really am a believer that you have to understand what the market is, and you have to understand how to make something that makes money for them. That's the secret. They don't care, to be really fairly honest. I don't think they care about color. They care about green. That's the color they care about. Green.
Green.
Absolutely. And Robert put it in his book. He said, you could be polka dotted pink. If you make them green, you are in. I'm telling you. And that's maybe not the understanding that they have. And by the way, the other thing that I really believe is that from here, we never belonged to a bunch of organizations where people weighed you down. We were just free to do what we did. We'd done it from here. We continued to. And we were with somebody like Miramax, Bob Weinstein specifically, for many movies. And Robert kept writing things. He kept penning scripts that Fox bought, for example. Both Hypnotic and Predators, Robert wrote in the 90s, originally. And people start dusting things off. And I was like, this is a really good movie. Or, a Predators came about because of that. Robert was doing Machete. Again, he wanted to do something with Danny because he'd already turned him into this
a cult hero. Yeah.
And now Machete,
actual cult hero,
a physical hero to all of us. Machete is just amazing. And we did it independently. We actually raised the money for that because I don't think anybody was thinking they were going to do it. It sounded like crazy. You know what I mean? Here's Machete, and then all of a sudden people signed on.
Dearest listener, I promise you, this is the last commercial break in this episode. Just hang in there. We'll be right back. Welcome back to More Than a Movie. I'm your third spy kid, Alejandro Mario Hernandez Fumero.
I'm going to leave you with something that we also have to keep in mind because, you always hear these sayings like crabs in a bucket, Latinos, Black, whoever, women, crabs in a bucket, And I heard somebody, I wish I knew who it was that said it to me, but it gave me chills all over my body. And when I say it, it gives me chills still. And they said, crabs are not supposed to be in buckets. Who puts us in buckets? And why do they put us in buckets? Be it diversity of any kind. Is it ourselves that got sometimes by being very like, it all has to be Latino, maybe we're putting ourselves in buckets too, at times, and I just really believe in generosity. I heard a chef say that, Grant Achatz from Alinea in Chicago, he had made a recipe at the French Laundry, and the guy was like, well, this is going to be now the recipe, but it's not yours anymore. And he went, no problem. I got more where that came from. We have more where that came from because it comes from somewhere else. And yes, but we still have to understand that there is a business of it.
Well, that's a great place to end. Elizabeth Avian, this is an honor to talk to you, and I'm so grateful for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. It's great. Beautiful.
Thanks so much. And thank you for listening to this episode of More Than a Movie. I'm Alex Fumero, but my spy code name is Angry Yuka on the internets. With great power comes great responsibility, but what if you're just a teenager from Queens? Next week on the podcast, I talk to undercover Cuban Phil Lord, writer and producer of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Tune in then. More Than a Movie Season 2 was produced by Chloe Tagliagambe with the help of Reynolds Gutierrez and Veronica Hernandez in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. Hosted by me, Alex Fumero. Edited by Rose Reed and Chloe Tagliagambe with the help of Saida Quevedo. Executive producers are Carmen Graterol, Rose Reed, Isaac Lee, and me, Alex Fumero. Sound design by Gonzalo Messi. Original music by Golden Minds, Darko, and Iame. Recorded at JTB Studios and Vaudeville Sound. Our executive producers at iHeart are Giselle Bances and Arlene Santana. For more My Cultura podcasts, listen to the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.